You're listening to Docs Outside the Box with guest Dr. Kyle Horton, running for Congress in North Carolina's 7th District.
Welcome to Docs Outside the Box podcast. This is your official show, looking inside the minds of cutting-edge and innovative doctors. Think you'll find these stories in any medical textbook? Sorry. You're getting real live insight from men and women pushing the envelope beyond medicine. Ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things. Let's start now with your host, Dr. Nee Darko.
This episode is brought to you by Set for Life Insurance. Protect yourself against life setbacks with Set for Life Insurance. Set for Life Insurance gets you disability and life insurance at a reduced cost with their exclusive discounts. Now that's why I use them. Visit www.setforlifeinsurance.com and tell them Dr. Darko sent you. What's good, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. I am the Doc Outside the Box, Dr. Nee Darko. And I am excited about this one. Last week, we had a physician candidate who was running for office, Dr. Jason Weston. And this week, we have another physician candidate who's running for office. Before we get to that one, though, let's do a quick housekeeping item. So I just released the Docs Outside the Box directory. I don't know if you heard about it yet, but it's out. And in essence, it's a directory that's going to, in essence, encompass all things that docs are doing outside the box. We're talking about physician podcasts. We're talking about blogs, social media accounts, YouTube, anything that doctors are doing outside the box. I want this list to be the definitive list where people can come to, the lay public can come to, other physicians, other residents, med students, pre-meds can come and find a way to find out about these folks in an easy manner. Right now, it's just physician podcasts right now, which is a good start. Slowly but surely, the list will continue to get longer. And the way in which you get to it is you go to www.docsotb.com and you look at the menu tab and you click on DOTB directory and you'll be taken to the physician podcast list. Once again, this is the definitive guide. We've got links for Apple Podcasts. We got links for all the different podcast aggregate sites. We got contact information. We got pictures of the podcast and a little bit of a description. And then also there's an opportunity for you all to review these podcasts also. So it's something that I'm really excited about, something that I've been thinking about for a while because I've had so many different people come up to me and say, one, the only way I found out about your podcast is by literally typing in docs by mistake, and then your podcast came up. And I've heard that so many different times that I said, look, there's got to be a way to make this a lot easier, not only for listeners, but also for other podcasters who want to be, or who want to get more visualized and want more eyes looking at their website and their podcast. And the same thing also applies to other doctors who are doing other things like YouTube and blogging and things of that nature. So I hope you all support it. I hope podcasters who are listening, you decide to jump on this podcast. It's really, really easy. The user interface is very easy to use. And then for listeners, once again, just hop on there and you'll find that it's really easy to search. And it's even categorized based off of careers, educational, entertainment. And I think that's pretty much it. There may be another one right now, but I can't think of it right now. So once again, go ahead and take a look at it. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So on to my next guest. As I stated earlier, we've got another physician running for Congress. I'm really excited that, these candidates have decided to come on the show and kind of talk about why they're running. I think this is a great opportunity for you all to learn and to see what it's like from a physician standpoint to run for Congress. But my next guest is Dr. Kyle Horton. She is an internal medicine doctor by training. She also has an MBA, and currently she is running for the 7th District seat in North Carolina. Her tagline is, "Put a doctor in Congress who will be on call for families." I actually kind of like that a lot. And here are the things that she's fighting for. She's fighting for an economy that rewards hard work and one that puts families first over corporate profits, right? We all like that. She also is a big advocate for veterans as well as bringing light to veteran suicide. She comes from a very large family with a long history of service in the armed forces and has some personal experience with veteran suicide. She also believes healthcare is a right and wants to stabilize markets for the Affordable Care Act. That's probably going to be really difficult. And then she also has some experiences with bipartisan legislature, which is ever so needed right now. So me and Dr. Horton, we're going to talk about why she's deciding to run for Congress. Once again, just like I did last week, going to talk to her about how acrimonious it must be working in Congress and the low approval ratings. And she thinks that she has a good answer as to why she can be very successful in Congress. We're going to learn about why she feels as though she has a shot to win this election, her plans to work in a bipartisan way. We'll learn more about the crisis of veteran suicide. Also, she gets real and she talks about why she decided to stop practicing while running for office. And something that really means a lot to me. And net neutrality is a big deal. So she's going to talk about net neutrality. And then we're going to take a little bit of a lighthearted turn, and you're going to hear about one of her favorite TV shows, which is one of my favorite TV shows also. So I won't let the cat out the bag. You're going to have to listen to the episode for that. And also you're going to learn about why she's also hashtag not just a doc. So this is going to be a good one. I hope you all get inspired by this one. Without further ado, I present Dr. Kyle Horton. Dr. Kyle Horton, candidate for the congressional office in the North Carolina 7th District. Welcome to Docs Outside the Box.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited. A little bit of a backstory. We had some technical difficulties, so we had to re-record this episode. So thank you so much for being on the show again.
Not a problem. I'm excited.
Now, before we get into the nitty gritty, because we got a lot to cover, let's learn a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background, like what medical school you went to, residency, things like that.
Yeah, so I am internal medicine, and I actually did my undergrad out here where I'm running, which is at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. But I went back to Ohio, which is where I grew up, to attend Wright State University Boonshoff School of Medicine. And I actually did a 5-year dual degree physician leadership development program there. And then I did my internal medicine residency training at Virginia Commonwealth in Richmond, Virginia. And I stayed on as teaching faculty after residency, working at the McGuire VA, and in particular working in their post-deployment clinic for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans.
Now, quick question. Why did you decide to get an MBA?
Yeah, so it was a brand new program. I was actually in the inaugural class, and I didn't know how I would use the MBA, if at all, when I decided to do it. But I was really interested in the fact that on the physician leadership development side, they were doing a lot of education on healthcare economics, on Medicare and Medicaid and payers. So I didn't know whether I would use the MBA to run my own practice one day, or whether it would just be a matter of, something to have in my back pocket in terms of my own personal finances. But now the way that I use it in politics is budgets are quite frequently used as justification to cut programs. And obviously, healthcare economics is a universal topic of concern in terms of, as we're looking at ensuring that all Americans have access to healthcare coverage going forward, and the tremendous cost to healthcare in this country.
It's nice to have that MBA in your back pocket, huh?
Yeah. And I mean, that's some of the advice that I might give to, younger listeners. If there's any educational programs that are available like that, it's hard to see your way forward, but it gives you career options in ways that you may never anticipate.
Now, let's get down to the real nitty gritty now. Now, why exactly are you running for Congress?
Yeah. So I really feel like families are being disenfranchised, and that particularly in Eastern North Carolina, we have a ton of middle and working class families who are struggling. There are service sector jobs where there's no growth and no opportunity for advancement. And then we have a bunch of rural counties where, again, agriculture in this country has been cut. Everything is basically going to the wealthiest 1%, and there are huge multinational corporations that are exploiting family farmers here in our district. So I'm really running to fight to put the health and well-being of our families first. Our district was in the top 5 in the entire country for how many people might have lost their life-saving healthcare coverage had they gone forward with the House version of Trump Care. So this is a moment in which I think people are ready to put a doctor in the house who's on call for their family for a change.
Now, what do you think about messaging? Because it seems as though, and you mentioned this on your website, people have a bad taste in their mouth, or they have a negative connotation with Obamacare. But then when they hear about the Affordable Care Act in terms of all of the positives, they're all for it. How do you intend to fight that? It's almost like ignorance messaging when going into Congress, because obviously, one is the same, but because there's so much acrimony in politics, messaging is so key. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think the core is connecting with people on a personal level. And so I have made it my commitment to express where I stand in terms of my values as a human being. So I try to cut through some of the wonky policy and the terminology by abandoning labels whenever we can, or these sticky wicket words where, Obamacare versus the ACA confuses a lot of people. And so what we're doing in part is we're breaking things down as simply as we possibly can, which is to say we're doing a series of focused events to do a deeper dive on issues that are misunderstood. We're doing one related to CHIP. We're breaking healthcare into a discussion of mental health, in particular, prescription drug affordability in particular, the ACA, and doing it at separate events so that we can really do quite a bit of education for voters on those topics. And then we're also hosting town halls where people can hear from me directly and relate that to my personal experience and story in person to really connect the dots with our message.
Now, you mentioned personal experience. As a physician, things are very black and white. You take care of a patient. If they're sick, you give them medication or a treatment or surgery, and hopefully they get better. It's usually very black and white. But in politics, it's very gray. There are a lot of back dealings. Obviously, like I said before, there's a lot of acrimony. Nobody trusts Congress anymore. Low approval ratings. Like, how on earth do you think that you're going to be able to make that jump? Do you find that, like, you sound very encouraged to go there, but, with so much lack of working together, how do you expect to reach across the aisle?
So how I reach across the aisle is by working on the things that I know that there are avenues of agreement. So I'm a Democrat, but in the past, for example, I have worked with Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina, my home state, took Senator Richard Burr's place on the Veterans Committee. Well, after repeated conversations about patients of mine who were caught in near tragic delays, and understanding that veteran suicide in particular has become a crisis. At the time I started working on the legislation, there were actually 22 veteran suicides a day in this country, believe it or not. Richard Burr came on board to sponsor legislation while on the Veterans Committee that working with veterans groups to put forth. And then Senator Tom Tillis was actually willing to work across the aisle once I interconnected with him on supporting younger veterans exposed to burn pits, which could be like the Agent Orange for a new generation. So I think the key in politics is to look for the conversations that you can have in a civil way that are important and productive. And then once you've worked together on some of these things that we all agree on, like taking care of our veterans and our sacred obligation to them, then it becomes much easier to navigate those really controversial things because you've already worked with a person, you have an established relationship with them that's positive. And so I think that's really the key. So one of our frames in our campaign is talking about healing our divides, because we absolutely have to cut through the extreme partisan polarization that's characterizing Washington.
Now, you mentioned that pretty terrible statistic with veterans. You've incorporated that into your logo. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So in my logo, when you're looking at our website, which is drkyleforcongress.com, there are 20 stars. And really, those are more than stars to me. They're patients and soldiers, heroes, veterans, friends, and family. And what they symbolize is that the current estimate is 20 veterans lost to suicide every day in this country. I had worked on the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention for American Veterans Act and got to know Clay Hunt's parents a little bit, to hear his story. He was a Marine sniper who was tragically lost to suicide at 28. And when I was working in the post-deployment clinic for Iraq and Afghanistan in particular, I had patients attempt suicide while awaiting getting integrated into mental health care. And so I have a legit passion and concern that we are facing a true public health crisis with veteran suicide. And so the initial piece of legislation that I worked on, that Clay Hunt bill, it's worth noting that one single U.S. senator blocked it, Tom Coburn from Oklahoma, and he blocked it on fiscal conservative grounds. It had been scored at a cost of $22 million over 5 years, but we weren't willing to spend that for then the estimated 22 veteran suicides a day, when in a single day we will spend $70 million on Tomahawk missiles alone. Those are the kind of misguided priorities that need to be changed. And part of the reason I'm so optimistic about my ability to change those is my background and experience as both an MD and MBA in clinical care, but also that I have a really unique voice in having worked in the VA healthcare system at a time when the waits are tremendous, and at a time when the waits right here in Eastern North Carolina are some of the longest in the country in my district.
Now, can you compare and contrast your life as a physician versus running for office? Because I think before we started, you had let me know that you're not practicing currently at the moment just because of the grueling schedule for running for office. Can you give us a little bit of a window into your life?
Yeah. So on the campaign trail, it's a totally different deal than being a doc. But I use many of the same skills from clinical practice, and it was not an easy decision to stop seeing patients because, like a lot of us, I really like to connect with people on a very personal level, and I was working in primary care before. But it was neither fair to my patients nor would it be fair to everyone who's supporting me on the campaign to be trying to do both and doing justice to neither. So I spend a ton of time on the road. And for example, this week we have 3 town halls, and it takes me about 2.5 hours to get to the other end of my district because it's geographically so huge. So my day is filled with policy meetings, with writing, with calling for money, unfortunately, because there's way too much money in politics. And then we have events all throughout the district to really connect with people on a personal level. And so that's really what it's like campaigning.
Have you ever had to turn down money just because you felt like, if I take this money, I may have to do certain, things in the future that you may not agree or may not be in alignment with your purpose?
No, we have not turned down money to date. But I have taken a pledge, and we've been promoting this, that I will not be taking corporate polluter and PAC money. And I feel really strongly about that because my opponent, we are dealing with a water crisis out here in Eastern North Carolina. We have a set of emerging contaminants that are likely carcinogens. The agent that we have in particular is called Gen X, if people are interested in looking it up. But he has been taking money from the DuPont Good Government Fund and from the Fortune 500 offshoot of that company to fund his campaigns. So basically, he's taking the corporate polluter money, who is responsible for contaminating our water and poisoning our kids. And it's my personal opinion that our kids should never be guinea pigs at the hands of a Fortune 500 polluter. So I've taken the pledge that I will not be funding my campaigns with dirty polluter money.
Now, I went and did some research on the 7th District in North Carolina. It's been held for over 100 years by a Democrat. But can you talk about what happened in 2014, because it switched hands to a Republican? And not only talk about that, but do you think you can actually reverse what happened?
Yeah. So I think what's happened here is what's happened in a lot of the country is that there is a very real understanding and anger that the economy is not working for regular folks and hardworking families like mine. My parents both retired from GM, for example, and they both started their careers in union. My dad was hired into a white collar job, though, out of the Pentagon after he was drafted for Vietnam. But basically, in a generation, our family went from a small tobacco farm in eastern Kentucky to then my parents had really good jobs and a solid footing in the middle class. And those jobs just don't exist. So, and in the 7th Congressional District, that's the case with agriculture in particular. There's no industries that are paying living wage and providing good benefits for your family and ensuring access to health care. So people feel totally alienated from the political system. And so my opponent was able to sort of get in there and say, I'm a, North Carolina born and bred guy, and prey on that anger in the way that Donald Trump did as well. But what I'm noticing is that now people are hungry for non-career politicians and people who have a really unique voice and personal experience who are going to connect with them, and not just big money donors.
This is just offhand stuff. Like when you see things like Oprah is considering running for office, what are your thoughts on that? Do you roll your eyes, or do you take it seriously, or are you just like, it's just, extraneous news, let's just keep it moving?
Yeah, I do try and just keep it moving, because in as much as I can, our campaign is about a lot more than the occupant of the White House. Mm-hmm. And Oprah, I mean, you can't really compare her to Donald Trump in terms of her qualifications and her background in years of actually interviewing world leaders and things like that. I mean, they're not the same in terms of even their television career. But it does concern me that we have such a pop culture driven society. I don't want to set the tone that in order to be president of the United States, you have to be a celebrity, basically. I think that would be a step backwards. I really would like to see the next occupant of the White House be someone who really has a very long record in public service and understanding what needs to happen politically.
What's been your biggest hurdle running for public office?
A little bit of everything. The hardest part is probably time, and time equals money when you're on the campaign trail. So now, unfortunately, with the amount of money that you have to raise, it's best to spend 3 to 4 hours on the phone, which means then I'm trying to make calls while I'm driving to an event clear across the district. And so I think that's been the biggest challenge for me.
Now, do you see, or do you think that other doctors, there's a path for them to, actually succeed in Congress? Because I'm sure there's a lot of physicians who are like me who, in essence, even before I wanted to be a doctor, actually, I was thinking about, I want to be a politician. I want to be in the White House one day and things like that. And then as you get older and you start to grow and you see how politics occur, you start to think, oh, I could never do that. Why do you think there's like a vacuum of space for doctors, and why do you think they would do well in Congress?
Yeah, I think we would do well because we are used to breaking down really complicated information to explain it to people and our patients in a simpler way. And so if you really look at, there's a broad lack of understanding of policy, I think, in this country. It's extremely complicated when we look at why the economy isn't working for for hardworking middle class families. And so our usual skill of taking lab and test results and trying to communicate them to patients in a way that they will understand, to meet people where they're at, and also a lot of the skills that we learned in terms of motivational interviewing are really helpful as I'm getting out and shaking hands and getting to know people, because I try and always break that down, make the policy personal, think of how to motivate them as a human being to make healthier and better decisions. So those are the skills that apply directly. Now, on the other level, certainly the frustrations of politics, like you said, that we're not fixing or curing things simply, or things aren't as concrete, is the other side of the coin. But I think if you really devote yourself, we all know how to work hard. We did, how many hours during residency. That's the thing that drives me every day, because we're used to working crazy hours, and that's the way, politics functions now. So, yeah, I'd encourage anyone who's thinking about it to keep considering it as a career option.
Here's a question that I want to ask you, and it's not personal, but it's something that affects me, more so than, maybe someone else. But I am so interested in this net neutrality issue. I'm really discouraged by it, actually. Me as a podcaster, being able to have my information be on the same level as CNN, go at the same speed as, ESPN, things like that is really key. And for the small business owner who has a small web front, them being able to compete with really large corporations and being on equal footings is key. And this net neutrality thing, if it really goes through, if companies are able to do what they really want to do, it's scary stuff. Like, what are you going to be able to do? Can you fix this? Is this something that is fixable?
I do think it would be fixable if we change the face of power to a new generation of leaders. So I'm Gen X. A lot of our members of Congress are not of the generation where they've, grown up seeing the internet evolve, and where, they're as comfortable with technology as probably you and I are. And so I think what we're seeing is a tide of really multinational corporations and their lobbyists taking hold of Congress and what's going on with the White House administration in a way that's not productive. And it's Goldman Sachs. It's evident in the net neutrality that these huge corporations will absolutely be able to, I share your concern, cripple small businesses. We have small tech firms right here in my district that will be disenfranchised, I'm sure, and trying to, pay basically big companies to even be able to function and stay in business. And I'm concerned too, throughout our rural counties here, people don't even have basic internet functioning right now. And then as we move to the next step, what is going to happen with things like rural telemedicine that's been evolving, that ideally you want speedy connections to be able to take care of those patients, if that's going to be a viable solution to bring healthcare to these communities where people can't travel easily to the nearest medical center.
Scary stuff, but I hope you can do something about it. And let's take a quick pivot into something a little bit more lighthearted. So I hear that you are a huge fan of The Walking Dead. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. And I usually binge watch it, so you are not allowed to get into.
So let me tell you what just happened, Dr.
Yeah.
Did you know? No, I'm teasing. What season are you on right now?
So I'm actually in the middle of the 7th, and I had come in first watching it at the very end of the 2nd season, and then went back and binge watched before. But I tell you, the thing that's been, I take it in fits and spurts to how much I love the show. I thought the governor was fantastic.
I loved
he was
good.
When they were back to Alexandria, but now it has gotten so dark. Yeah. That there's a reason why I'm behind with Negan. I feel like the plot line has just become A little bit too much and almost too sadistic even for me.
No, I agree with you. I think it's like, they want you to know that Negan is a bad boy. And like each episode is like, Negan is bad, right? And then the next episode is, let me remind you why Negan is a bad guy. And then the next episode is like, he's really bad. I told you he's bad. It's like, okay, we get the point. Let's move on. But you got to still catch up, though, because there's some good stuff that's happening. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's been an amazing show. But I too agree with you that over the last, I say, season and a half, the story has gotten stagnant, and it's no surprise the ratings are down. So, but I think it's really cool that you watched that show.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites too.
Let me ask you a question.
We have that in common.
Do you ever think like, if civilization went to, hell, basically, like this is how we would all act, basically, we would, kind of form these little groups here and there and kind of fight each other. I mean, it's interesting. I think one of the reasons why the show does so well is that obviously it's not about the zombies. It's about just us in nature, what we would actually do if, something like this would happen.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so interesting too, is that it sort of questions what are our primal urges as human beings and how do we associate with each other. And I think that's what's so interesting too about the way that their group sort of evolved with the farm when you go back to the, early roots of the story.
Is that they way back, Dr. Horton.
Yes, that's way back. They were connecting as a family, which is what's interesting, I think, about that particular evolving storyline. And then everyone else is almost like a pack mentality, and it becomes, survival of the fittest. They were banding together as a family, which is, yeah.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the interview. Let's do some fast fire questions. You game?
I'm game.
All right. What's one thing you want people to get from this podcast?
So one thing I want people to get from this podcast is that there's an opportunity to do something really big with our campaign. And I hope that they will check us out in more detail, because there has never been a Democratic woman doctor in Congress. And there are no women physicians currently in Congress.
Really?
So it's an important opportunity to support someone who would, I think, fill a unique need and be a unique voice to fight for our families.
Wow, that's something that I did not know. Thank you for dropping that.
Yeah.
Now, knowing what you know now, what advice would you have given yourself as a pre-med?
What I would say is engage in your community in whatever way you might be productive. It's difficult when you're in med school and residency, but even if it's just voting too, make sure that you are participating in the political process. And if you have an interest in public health or something like that, do volunteer at the free clinic and stuff. I didn't take as much advantage of engaging in some of those things that I enjoyed. If you're someone who's considering a career in emergency medicine, do some, volunteer shifts with and ride-alongs with first responders. I wish I'd taken more advantage of things like that.
Okay. So what's one life hack or piece of technology that you use to make your life a little bit easier?
Google Drive is absolutely essential on the campaign. And it makes my life so much easier because we can share images, we can share graphics, we can share our, emails immediately with social media volunteers so that they can help to mobilize people around our campaign.
Excellent answer. I can't live without Google Forms or Google Drive, Google Docs. I need all of that for the podcast to run smoothly. Okay, what's one thing that you're proud of that nobody else knows about?
Yeah. We don't talk about this much on the campaign trail, but I'm really proud of the fact that I never really give up in a fight. A lot of people don't realize that when Senator Tom Coburn decided to block that veteran suicide prevention bill, I actually sat down. They weren't giving meetings to any of the heads of the big veterans groups. They were just, doing the usual lobbyists coming through the office. They wouldn't give me a meeting. And I sat down outside the hallway ready to get arrested to do the right thing. And I think a lot of people don't recognize my willingness to fight for what is right. And also, I engage at a grassroots level that a lot of people don't know about. I'm trying to work on local initiatives to end veteran homelessness through developing a hospital that's being closed into affordable housing for medically fragile individuals and veterans in particular. So I think those are the things that I never give up. And it's not just for me, it's about really local decisions as well.
I love that answer, actually. I love it. Now, I want you to finish this sentence. I ask it to all my guests. It's, I'm not just a doc, I'm a
future congresswoman and a policy wonk.
Hey, I love that. I love that answer. Dr. Kyle Horton, I definitely believe in you. I love everything that I see in your campaign. I see big things coming for you in the future. So how about this? Would you promise to come on the show if you get elected?
I would absolutely promise to come on the show if I get elected. And I appreciate your unique voice so much and for having me on the program.
Oh, thank you once again. And this was a really great episode. I really think the listeners are going to learn a lot from you. They're going to be inspired by you, and can't wait. So you have there's a primary that's coming up, right?
Yes. So if we have a primary, our candidate filing officially was pushed back because some of the debate with the districts in North Carolina. So that would actually be the through the end of February is our candidate filing. And then the primary is May 8th, which we may or may not have a primary. But I would engage as many of your listeners are interested in our campaign at drkyleforcongress.com and hopefully before the primary, because I think they're going to like what they see.
Absolutely. Dr. Kyle Horton, once again, this was fun. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That was a great episode. Once again, I got to thank Dr. Kyle Horton for taking the time out of a busy campaign to be on the show. Once again, she is running for the congressional office in the North Carolina 7th District. If you want to learn more about her, go ahead and check out her website. Her website is drkyleforcongress.com. Once again, it's drkyleforcongress.com. You can find not only the links to her website, but also the links to her Facebook page as well as her Twitter page. These will all be in the show notes, on www.docsotb.com. Also, don't forget, please, if you found this episode to be really helpful, if you really found this episode to be something that you think others can benefit from, please don't forget to share it with others. You can share it via Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram or any other social media platform that you want to use. Also, don't forget there is a Facebook group for Docs Outside the Box. It's called Docs Outside the Box Nation. Here you'll find a whole bunch of different people who are thinking outside the box, living outside the box, and in general, people who just want to talk about previous episodes. It's also an opportunity where I live stream not only about what's going on with the show, but also a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. And I also at times will be bringing back previous guests to come on and just give us some updates on what's going on in their lives. So just go to community on the website, www.docsotb.com, and then click on community. And there's a link there to get you to the Facebook quickly. And also one thing that I mentioned earlier in the show is please don't forget, about the Docs Outside the Box directory. This is going to be the most definitive list where you can find future and current podcasts that are out there. If you want to know anything about podcasts that are hosted by physicians, this is the site that you want to go to. It's starting off small right now, but eventually it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So once again, if there's anybody that you know who's interested in learning more about podcasts or want to hear about podcasts that are hosted by physicians, this is the directory that you want to go to. Okay, I'm going to catch you on the next episode. But before I jet, just remember one thing. We only got one life. Let's make it count and live outside the box. Peace.